Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're always on the lookout for fresh perspectives, especially ones that point towards a brighter future.
Exactly. And today, we've got something truly special lined up.
We're diving deep, way deep, into something called the progressive utilization theory. Prout for short.
Now, this isn't some brand new hot-off-the-press idea.
Nope, this goes all the way back to 1959, the brainchild of Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar.
And let me tell you, for those of you who, like us, are fascinated by progressive ideas, optimistic visions of the future.
Ways to actually create a better world? Well, you're in for a real treat.
We're living in an age of information overload. It can be tough to sift through it all and find the truly valuable stuff.
Right, but don't worry, that's where we come in.
We've carefully gone through Sarkar's extensive body of work. We're talking Proutist economics, Prout in a nutshell, neo-humanism in a nutshell. We even delved into Human Society, Part 1 and 2.
Plus, a few problems solved. We wanted to make sure we captured the essence of Prout without overwhelming you with too much detail.
Exactly, a clear and engaging dive into this really forward-thinking approach.
So, ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
One of the most striking things about Prout is where it all began. Sarkar didn't just come up with a bunch of new ideas out of thin air.
No, not at all.
He was deeply concerned by what he saw happening in the world around him, even way back then. He called it the failure of used futures. Basically, he was saying that the existing ideologies, the dominant systems and ways of thinking,
Whether they were old school or revolutionary, they just weren't cutting it.
yeah, they weren't living up to their promises. And he saw this playing out in all sorts of ways. He pointed to social decay, the erosion of morality, and this sense that values were crumbling, even as societies were making huge material advancements. Kind of rings a bell, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Even back in the late 50s, he was observing trends that are even more evident today.
And what's really interesting is that Sarkar argued that a big part of the problem was an overemphasis on material and scientific progress.
Like we were racing ahead with technology and economic growth, but neglecting something crucial.
Yeah, the development of our cultural and moral compass. Kind of like building a super powerful engine without figuring out how to steer.
That's a great analogy. And Sarkar went even further. He took a critical look at the so-called success of industrialized nations. He said, hang on a minute, all this wealth and material abundance, it hasn't actually translated into widespread happiness.
Right, and he even had a term for it, radical hedonism. This idea that the more material stuff you have, the happier you'll be.
It's that endless pursuit of pleasure and possessions, especially among the wealthy.
But as we all know, deep down, that can be a pretty empty path.
It's like chasing a mirage, never quite reaching that promised oasis of fulfillment.
Now, Sarkar also looked at what happened with communism, which, at the time, was seen as this great hope for a more just and equitable world. But even that, he argued, ultimately faltered. It didn't deliver on its grand promises, leading to widespread disillusionment.
And he also critiqued intellectual liberalism, this idea that simply spreading rational thought and education would automatically resolve societal conflicts. But he was witnessing something else entirely.
Yeah, he saw these intense divisions emerging, not just between nations, but within societies themselves, along ethnic, racial, and religious lines.
And often, it was feelings of insecurity, whether economic or social, that amplify these divisions.
This is where Sarkar's analysis gets really interesting. He pointed out that many political theories, despite their differences on the surface, actually share a common thread, a focus on acquiring and maintaining power.
And he saw how this played out in different ways. In capitalist societies, for example, he observed how individuals were often reduced to economic men, essentially cogs in the machine, units of labor and consumption, constantly being influenced by governments, corporations, and the media.
Yeah, constantly bombarded with messages designed to shape their thoughts and behaviors. Now, Sarkar didn't just analyze those in power. He also looked at how the disenfranchised were responding to all of this. And he observed a concerning trend. He called it medieval obscurantism.
Basically a retreat into rigid dogmatic beliefs as a reaction against what he saw as the negative aspects of modern culture.
The pseudo-culture, as he called it. He felt that many people were feeling overwhelmed by economic forces, by the dominance of Western values, and they were seeking refuge in these more absolute, unchanging belief systems.
It's like a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other.
And Sarkar saw this happening with religion and science, too. He recognized science as this powerful tool, something that could help free minds from old dogmas. But at the same time, he cautioned that it could create its own new barriers.
Yeah, it could lead to a kind of materialistic dogma that actually limits our understanding of ourselves and the universe. And he was concerned that this could stifle genuine freedom of thought.
Pretty profound stuff, right?
Absolutely. And this is all really important context for understanding Prout and its core philosophy.
Because at its heart, Prout places a huge emphasis on freedom.
But not just freedom in one area or one sphere of life.
No, Sarkar was talking about freedom in a much more holistic way. He believed that true freedom encompasses the physical, the mental, and the spiritual.
And he argued that this holistic freedom is actually the most accurate way to measure the success of any social structure or political institution.
Yeah, are people truly free to live, think, and grow in all these different ways? That's the ultimate test. And this connects beautifully to that inherent human drive we were talking about earlier, that constant quest for knowledge, for deeper understanding, for broader perspectives.
Exactly. It's about realizing our full potential as human beings.
Now, to really grasp Prout, it's important to understand a key concept in Sarkar's philosophy, this idea that matter and consciousness aren't actually separate entities.
Right. It's not like they exist in these isolated boxes.
He believed they're deeply interconnected. And he used the term spiritual humanism to describe this understanding. Now, this isn't about religious dogma or following a specific set of beliefs.
No, it's about recognizing that our entire human experience, all of our desires, emotions, instincts, intuition, will reason everything we experience as human beings.
All of it exists within this integrated framework that's accessible to human comprehension. It's about realizing our fundamental unity and harmony with the entire universe.
Like a wave in the ocean. It appears separate, distinct, but it's ultimately inseparable from the water that makes it up.
That's a great image. And Sarkar applied this understanding to morality as well. He talked about spiritual morality, which is rooted in this monistic philosophy.
This core belief that everything is interconnected, that we're all part of this grand web of existence.
And that means we have responsibility for the well-being of not just ourselves, but all beings.
Exactly. It's about extending our circle of compassion and care as far as we can.
Sarkar posed this really powerful question. He said, what does the state stand for if human beings don't get a chance to build good physical well-being, to invigorate their intelligence with knowledge, and to broaden their hearts with love and compassion?
It really challenges us to rethink the purpose of our social structures, our institutions. Are they truly serving human well-being in all its dimensions?
And this leads beautifully into Prout's vision for the future. Sarkar called it the Renaissance Universal. He envisioned us actively creating new social organisms, new political systems that foster balance and harmony between all races, all cultures, and between humanity and the environment.
It's a vision of a world where diversity is celebrated and where all beings can thrive.
And he emphasized this freedom in three spheres we talked about: physical, mental, and spiritual. True progress for Sarkar wasn't just about material advancement or technological sophistication. It was about this continuous evolution towards higher consciousness and absolute freedom.
It's a journey of both individual and collective growth.
But he was also very clear that to achieve that, we need a strong foundation, a firm and adaptable physical and mental base that can support this ongoing evolution.
It's like building a beautiful and sustainable structure. You need a solid foundation to support it.
And this is where neo-humanism, also known as spiritual humanism, plays such a crucial role. Its universal spirit goes beyond just focusing on human well-being. It extends that care and compassion to encompass all living beings.
It's a truly expansive and inclusive worldview.
The goal is to create a social system where everyone, everywhere, can live securely, with dignity, and with the opportunity to break free from superstition and dogma. And Sarkar was adamant that human history had often gotten this wrong, focusing on the enrichment of the few at the expense of the many. He argued that we need a completely new philosophical foundation to build genuinely just and progressive societies.
A foundation built on these core principles of freedom, unity, and universal love.
All right, so we painted the big picture. Now let's zoom in a bit and explore Prout's core principles and his vision for the future in more detail.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
So what's the absolute top priority, the primary political objective of Prout?
Well, Sarkar was very clear about this.
It's about ensuring security for every single member of society.
And that doesn't just mean the bare minimum.
Nope, it goes way beyond that. It's not just about food, clothing, shelter, although those are obviously fundamental. It's also about psychological security, a sense of belonging, of being valued and respected.
And importantly, Sarkar didn't believe this should rely solely on some impersonal bureaucratic system.
Yeah, it's not just about handing out checks or creating more rules and regulations. It's about fostering genuine connection and care within communities.
And this is where his understanding of insecurity is so insightful. He recognized that it manifests differently across the globe.
In developing nations, it's often a matter of economic survival.
The daily struggle to meet basic needs.
But in wealthier nations, he observed this pervasive psychic insecurity.
This kind of existential angst, a sense of meaninglessness, of not knowing where you fit in.
Yeah, and he attributed a lot of that to the materialistic culture we're talking about, this feeling of being trapped in a system that doesn't value who you are, just what you consume.
And a feeling of powerlessness, of not having a real say in the decisions that shape your life.
So how does Prout propose we overcome these deeply rooted insecurities? Well, a big part of it is spiritual awakening.
It's about cultivating that deeper sense of connection with each other, with the natural world, and with something greater than ourselves.
And moving away from that top-down bureaucratic control towards a more humanistic approach to management and governance.
An approach where empathy, understanding, and a genuine concern for people's well-being are at the forefront.
Now, let's dive into this concept of physical, mental, and spiritual freedom in more detail. What exactly did Sarkar mean by that?
Okay, let's break it down.
Perfect.
Physical freedom, for Sarkar, starts with guaranteeing those minimum necessities for a dignified life.
Yeah, not just surviving, but thriving.
Exactly. Having access to nutritious food, clean water, comfortable shelter, healthcare, education, all the things we need to live healthy and fulfilling lives.
But it's not about limitless consumption, right?
No, not at all. Sarkar believed that there's a point where material accumulation stops contributing to our well-being and actually starts to detract from it.
Now, what about mental freedom?
That's about developing our minds so we can think critically, independently, and creatively. It's about being able to evaluate information, to discern truth from falsehood, and to overcome negative influences.
And Sarkar emphasized that freedom of thought is even more crucial than mere freedom of expression.
Especially in a world where information is constantly bombarding us from all directions.
And Prout's vision for education is really inspiring. It's about moving away from this rote learning, this memorization of facts, towards a more holistic approach that nurtures our intuition and creative consciousness.
It's about equipping people with the tools to become lifelong learners, critical thinkers, and problem solvers.
And Sarkar made a really important point about freedom. He said that it's not just about being free from negative circumstances.
It's also about having the freedom to pursue our aspirations, to develop our potential, to live meaningful lives.
And society has a huge role to play in creating those opportunities. Now, this brings us to another really crucial aspect of Prout. Its critique of the idea that maximum consumption equals maximum happiness.
This is where Sarkar echoed the wisdom of thinkers like E.F. Schumacher, who wrote that incredibly insightful book, Small is Beautiful.
Classic.
Schumacher argued that an economy solely focused on endless growth is ultimately unsustainable and deeply harmful.
Yeah, it's like a car speeding towards a cliff with everyone cheering for the driver to go faster.
And he used this powerful analogy of addiction. He said, imagine someone who's constantly seeking pleasure from external sources. They might get a temporary high, but it never lasts.
And they always need more to achieve the same effect.
Exactly. And Schumacher argued that the same thing can happen with material possessions. That endless pursuit of more can actually become this insatiable hunger that's never truly satisfied. And in the process, we neglect our inner values, our spiritual growth, and the things that truly contribute to lasting happiness. He said, and I love this quote, "Economic development is something much wider and deeper than economics. Its roots lie outside the economic sphere."
It's about recognizing that true well-being encompasses so much more than just material wealth.
So if endless consumption isn't the answer, how does Prout envision economic development?
Well, Sarkar didn't see economic activity as inherently bad. In fact, he recognized that it's essential for meeting our basic needs, for ensuring survival and creating a decent standard of living.
It's a powerful tool that can be used for good.
Exactly. But he believed it needs to be carefully balanced with the health of our natural environment and with our sociocultural progress. It can't just be about maximizing profit at all costs.
And the guiding principle for Prout is all-around collective welfare.
Yeah, it's about ensuring that economic activity benefits everyone, not just a select few.
And he proposed some really specific and forward-thinking guidelines to achieve this. For example, he talked about guaranteeing the minimum requirements of life for everyone: food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education. These aren't privileges, they're fundamental human rights. He also emphasized the need to decentralize economic power, to move away from these huge, centralized corporations and governments towards more localized, community-based systems. This would create what he called economic democracy, where people have a real say in how resources are allocated and used.
I love that.
And he went even further. He said that production shouldn't just be about churning out as much stuff as possible. It should prioritize meaningful consumption, creating goods and services that actually contribute to people's well-being.
And he was really concerned about the widening gap between wealthy and developing nations.
He saw that as a major source of global instability and suffering.
And he argued that we need to prioritize real human needs over the often artificial demands of the economic system itself.
We need to ask ourselves, are we producing things that actually make people's lives better? Or are we just creating more stuff that people don't really need just to fuel this endless cycle of production and consumption?
And all of this needs to happen in a way that's harmonious with nature.
Right. We can't keep exploiting the planet's resources without considering the long-term consequences.
And Sarkar even delved into the psychological aspects of economic activity.
Yeah.
He was a big proponent of cooperation over cutthroat competition. He recognized that the dog-eat-dog mentality, this constant striving to get ahead at the expense of others, can be incredibly damaging.
It creates this atmosphere of fear, distrust, and anxiety.
And he also pointed out that mere economic satisfaction won't magically lead to happiness. It's like we talk about with radical hedonism. There's a deeper level of fulfillment that we need to cultivate. And he even envisioned the development of something called psychoeconomy to counteract the dehumanizing effects of purely materialistic systems.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of our minds and the economy and creating systems that promote mental well-being alongside material prosperity.
Okay, so let's break down the three key terms within progressive utilization theory itself.
The building blocks of Prout.
Starting with progress. Now, Sarkar used the beautiful Sanskrit word pragati for this.
And he defined it as well-directed motion towards the well-being of all.
So it's not just about change for change's sake.
No, it's about ensuring that any movement, any development, any advancement is actually contributing to the betterment of humanity and the world as a whole.
And he emphasized that true progress, the kind that leads to lasting peace and happiness, is fundamentally rooted in the spiritual sphere.
It's about connecting to that deeper dimension of ourselves, to that sense of unity and interconnectedness that transcends our individual egos.
And resolving our inner conflicts, those internal battles that keep us from experiencing true peace and fulfillment.
Exactly. It's about aligning our individual journeys with the greater good.
And while he emphasized that spiritual progress is the ultimate goal, he also recognized that we need to nurture our physical and mental environments to support that journey. We can't just focus on one aspect of ourselves and neglect the others.
It's about creating a harmonious balance between all three.
And what's really cool about Prout is that it's not this rigid dogma. It's inherently adaptable, open to new information, and constantly evolving.
It recognizes that the world is constantly changing, and we need to be flexible enough to adapt and grow with it.
Okay. Next up is utilization.
This is all about recognizing the inherent capacity of things, resources, technologies, even ideas, to meet the genuine needs of all living beings and to drive positive development across all spheres of existence.
So it's not just about using things for our own selfish gain.
It's about harnessing their potential to create a better world for everyone.
And this applies especially to economic activity. The primary purpose of an economy, according to Prout, isn't just to generate profit for a select few. It's about effectively meeting human needs in a sustainable and equitable way.
And this requires a pretty big shift from the traditional capitalist model.
Yeah, it's about prioritizing utility value over exchange value.
Meaning we need to focus on how useful something is, how much it contributes to people's well-being, rather than just how much money we can make from it.
And Prout advocates for cooperative stakeholderism, where all the different groups involved in economic activity, workers, consumers, investors, the community, work together to ensure that everyone benefits.
It's about creating win-win situations wherever possible.
And Sarkar was a big proponent of utilizing local resources for the benefit of local communities. This reduces our reliance on these long, complex supply chains and helps create more self-sufficient and resilient communities. And he went even deeper than that. Prout emphasizes the intrinsic worth of all entities, not just their usefulness to us humans. He said we need to move away from this purely utilitarian view of the world, where everything is just a resource to be exploited.
It's about recognizing the beauty, the harmony, the inherent value of all life.
All right, last but not least, theory.
Now, Sarkar was very clear that Prout isn't just some abstract intellectual exercise.
It's not just a bunch of theories floating around some ivory tower.
No, its foundational principles are deeply rooted in spiritual intuition, in that innate wisdom that connects us all. However, the practical application of these principles, the specific policies and strategies, are designed to address real-world problems in concrete and adaptable ways.
So it's this beautiful blend of the spiritual and the practical.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal is to create a world where there's harmony between our outward actions in the world and our innermost spiritual aspirations.
Yeah, where we can live in a way that's both fulfilling and meaningful.
And where our individual growth contributes to the well-being of all.
And to really make all of this happen, Sarkar encouraged the formation of what he called study circles.
Groups of people coming together to really delve into these ideas, to understand them deeply, and to figure out how to apply them in their own lives and communities.
And he was adamant that it's not enough to just talk about philosophy.
We need both personal spiritual growth and collective action to truly bring about meaningful change.
It's about walking the talk.
So what are the key takeaways here? What's the essence of Prout?
Well, for me, it's the sheer scope and depth of its vision. It's not just about tweaking a few things here and there. It's about fundamentally rethinking how we live, how we relate to each other, how we organize our societies.
It's a comprehensive blueprint for a better future.
And what makes it so compelling is that it's rooted in this profound understanding of human potential. This belief that we're capable of so much more than we often realize.
And that our individual well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of all.
And it's incredibly optimistic. It doesn't shy away from the challenges we face, but it offers a path forward, a way to create a world that's truly just, sustainable, and fulfilling for everyone.
It's a vision that's both inspiring and empowering.
For those of you listening, always seeking those aha moments, I truly hope this deep dive into Prout has sparked some new ideas, some new possibilities in your mind.
And maybe even a sense of hope and excitement about the future.
Because ultimately, Prout is about recognizing our interconnectedness, our shared humanity, and our responsibility to create a world that works for everyone.
And that brings us to our final thought. Something for you to ponder as you continue your own exploration of these ideas. What if the active pursuit of both individual and collective well-being, guided by this profound sense of interconnectedness and this deep yearning for inner freedom, became the central organizing principle of our society?
How would that transform the way we live, the way we make decisions, the way we interact with each other and with the natural world?
What kind of world could we create if we truly embraced this vision? That's something worth thinking about.
Definitely worth exploring further. If you're intrigued, we encourage you to check out Sarkar's writings. And hey, why not start a study circle with some friends or colleagues? These ideas are meant to be discussed, debated, and put into action. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.